Hi, this is Carrie Brownstein.
This is DJ Premier.
This is Darren Aronofsky.
You got the RZA right here.
Rose McGowan.
Radiohead.
Aisha Tyler.
Tribe Called Quest. Fred Armisen.
Fritz Paul.
Javier Munoz, Seth Meyers.
Frankie Cosmos.
Flying Lotus.
Hi, we're Chaim, and you're listening to the Talkhouse Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Talkhouse Podcast. I'm Josh Modell. This week, we've got a lively conversation between a pair of Nashville friends who also happen to be incredible songwriters and performers, Margo Price and Tristen. Now, Margo Price grew up in small-town Illinois, but made her way to Music City and played in a couple of pop-leaning bands before giving in to the allure of country music. It can be hard not to, and she's great at it. After going solo, Price released a pair of albums on Jack White's Nashville-based Third Man Records and built up a loyal fan base with amazing songs and even better live shows. For album number 3, she moved to a new label and engaged some incredible session musicians to help her out, including Benmont Tench of Tom Petty's band, Matt Sweeny, Pino Palladino, and her old pal Sturgill Simpson, who co-produced. The album's called That's How Rumors Get Started, and here's a little bit of a song called Hey Child.
How long can you hold down your resistance? Hey child, you don't know, no baby, you don't know your own existence.
Tristen also grew up in Illinois and made her way to Nashville, though her musical journey has taken her to more out-of-the-way sounds than her friend Margo over the course of 5 albums. She's one of those songwriters and performers absolutely beloved by other musicians, and for good reason. She's a risk-taker in the studio, venturing out into unknown territory and pretty much always finding something at least interesting and often incredible. Her latest album is this year's Aquatic Flowers. Check out a little bit of the song Complex from that new album.
I'm a drag to be around. I've got enough secrets to drown you. Overweight with hate, unaware of what I've become. The extreme human being that you love. I've got a complex. It's complex. I don't know why I act this way.
Tristen and Margo get into it right away, talking about the financial realities of today's music industry, how working with their significant others works, and, quote, the trick of capitalism at its core. That might sound heavy, and sometimes it is, but it's also super informative and fun. Enjoy.
Hi. How are you? I'm doing great. I just been doing a lot of momming and, trying to fit in work and having a little anxiety about going back on the road a lot, I mean, I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, how are you feeling?
I don't know. I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with the music industry. I was thinking about all the things I wanted to talk to you about. And I was thinking about all the things that are making me feel, it's like a pandemic. You have nothing, you don't do anything for a year. You have no social anxiety. You don't have to be away from your kid. It's all taken care of. Anything you want to do is a plus and a bonus and everybody's happy. And then now we're just supposed to jump right back into this other thing. And I don't know what your situation is, but I don't really want to leave my kid for that long. And I'm a little bit more aware, I think, of how the industry is sort of based on, it's like the only industry that everybody's basically volunteering. Nobody's making any money.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say it's exploitative, but it totally 100% is.
Oh, I do want to say that.
Yeah. I mean, and almost if you want to talk about a lot of those things and speak out, I kind of feel like you're going to get blacklisted, there's just such a double-edged sword right now with what the streaming industry has done to the value of songs and art. And it's something that everybody consumes. Everybody just completely takes it for granted. And, here we are supposed to drop all this money into making these great albums and no one will buy them. And then we have to go out on the road and make some money out there and then bring back the little bits of cheese for everybody who's
yeah
sustained from it.
It's the only industry where there's always somebody willing to work for free at the bottom. Like when we were first starting out, we were expected to work for free.
Yeah.
And we just wanted to play so much that we would do it.
I know. I have been thinking about a lot too with, like you were saying, so many things have stayed the same for our pay and our compensation, but yet inflation has, made it really hard for a lot of people to sustain when normally they would have been able to. Like the streaming percentage that we get when one song is played on Spotify is based off of player pianos from like the late 1800s, early 1900s. That's the rate that they're like, oh, if you would have had a song that you wrote and it got in a player piano. And like, the old days where people were riding horses, like, okay, why are we still being paid that? It's unacceptable. And I feel like everybody has got to come together and create some kind of group because no one person can tackle it alone.
There's only leverage in, the power of many, right?
Totally.
And that's why record labels have sort of collective bargaining with Spotify, and they can get different rates, I guess, for their artists. But at the end of the day, it's like you're also saying, and this is the trick of capitalism at its core and worker exploitation. Because honestly, Margo, I think the exploitation of artists, like I think this is the podcast I want to make. I want to do something, academic that actually studies this, because I feel like, we all know something's off, and we've been around for the decline, and, we're selling as a whole, like what I know years and years ago, it was like 1/685th of the amount of records are selling.
I mean, we're just at such a strange turning point. And I do think that the pandemic completely like pulled the wool away to be like, okay, we have got to protect the arts, because no one's even going to want to become a songwriter, or, who's going to do it?
It's not possible for working class people. And there's no more middle class. There's no more, okay, you're going to sell 30,000 records and you're going to make some money off your records, and you can go on tour and support the album. And like the money at the end is normal. Now you're paying to make your record. You're paying your label to get a copy of it, like a record store.
And sometimes you're breaking even on tours. I mean, even when I go to Europe, it's like, it has been so hard to go over there and to pay my band. I mean, we're definitely not sitting first class. And sometimes it's like, oh, I can just bring Micah, like my piano player, and like, we'll go do a tour. But yeah, the thing that also drives me nuts is like, okay, so I would rather sell a record. I would rather sell a vinyl. And I love that I have, with Third Man, I had a lot of fans that were just like, we are physical copy people. And it's amazing that, they're like, I will sell a good amount of CDs and a good amount of vinyl. Then, there's still, but I still am like, you look at the Spotify numbers and I'm like, well, my numbers aren't very good on Spotify. And I know that festivals are booked, that people judge you off of that number. They judge you off of, what your online following is. Well, not every single person that follows you is, may even have a social media account, but, or the Spotify thing, it's like, hey, well, look, I sold X amount of records. You can't count how many times people are spinning those at home, but it's just such a double-edged sword, because I feel like they really are looking at that shit when they're booking festivals. And then when they say like, oh, well, this person can headline because they have higher Spotify numbers or whatever.
I used to sell shoes, and we had metrics to judge us to make sure we were selling and upselling and all this crap. And then I'm in music, and I'm an artist, and it's rebellious, and who cares about money, right? Which is this prevailing culture we live in, right? Which is art is a gift, but that's like a privilege to be able to think you don't care about money, because when you actually get to a point where you want to have security and you want to own a home and
you want to have a family and everything.
You want to have a family. But I think that the other thing too, for me, is that the big capitalist problem is that I get down to like how I feel, but then I can't give up the very little streaming money I get in.
Right. And people discover it through there. And I have had lots of people say like, oh, I found you like on Spotify. You just came up on my algorithm. And then I saw through Spotify that you were playing, and I bought a ticket and I came to your show. Well, that's wonderful. And I love that. But there is no reason why we can't be paid more per stream. When you go into Spotify's office and they're sitting there in $13,000 chairs, like, hey, what's going on? This boardroom looks pretty fancy. This office you got here in downtown New York, like, hey, I'm glad to do it. And it's a great idea. All the world's music at your fingertips. What a brilliant idea. It
makes us better.
Yeah, it does. It's like, let's just...
having access to music.
Totally. I mean, I'm not like totally against streaming and I use it as well. And I love making playlists and it's so convenient and it's wonderful. But it's like, there has got to be a way that we can... And I don't know if there's also like, if this labels are getting more, and like you were saying, certain artists they can make more money, but when you're a small fish in a big pond, it's like, they're like, we do not care. We're not going to pay you. I mean, there was some terrible quote from the CEO the other day. I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like basically saying like, we're not going to give any handouts, or I don't know what kind of, do you remember what it was? Tell
yes.
me.
When it first came out, he said, you can't just put out a record every 2 years like you used to and expect it to work on Spotify. And he kind of put, totally brushed off the idea of paying more and went like, it's your fault. You need to produce in this other way. And it sucked. And it was a sad, it's just, as a business owner, and yes, like I own a very small business.
Still, it's a great business and I love it, by the way. Like I go in there all the time.
It's great. It's, maintaining a giant closet of clothing. I always think about the people that work for me. Like that's, as a business owner, you can have morality and you can make decisions based on how much money is coming in, but also taking care of people. So I don't buy it that there's not a way to take care of the inequity, and not just the inequity, just to pay workers. And so that's why I feel like one of the, I remember reading this and it just blew my mind. One of the ways to exploit workers is to declassify them. And so it makes sense that the word content provider came up about 7 or 8 years ago. We are the ones making what is being sold, whether you're selling it through a subscription or whatnot. We are the laborers, we are the workers. And to declassify it makes us feel disconnected from the transaction that's taking place. So it doesn't surprise me. I feel captive by the hand, that feeds me, because you can get playlisted, and I get playlisted a lot.
Yeah.
Which is super nice.
Same. I'm sure that I've won some fans through there. It's not that I don't want to be involved. I just feel like so many artists that I talk to are fed up with it. Like I did a Zoom call like this with Brittany Howard, and I said, what pisses you off most about the music industry? And she said 100% streaming is. And she was like, it was before the election. And she's like, if we get someone good in there, she's like, we need to go to the White House and we need to have a meeting and we have got to talk about it. It's not like we're trying to bankrupt them or anything, but shit, like...
It's not just Spotify. It's Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and all the other... There's a bunch. It's a culture that says we figured out a way to create a paywall for ourselves. And we want all the people... Again, we want you to work for free. We want you to... Because we know you're going to do it anyway.
Exactly.
And that's the philosophical dilemma at the bottom of it, because like I just said yes to, I'm not going to say time frame wise because I'm not going to call anybody out, but I said yes to a free show. I'm not saying that it was free to the public, but it was also, I wasn't going to get paid. And, then sort of the billing came out and it was really bizarre because it was girls opening for boys, regardless of what the situation is.
Always.
And I just felt like, one, you're selling a ton of alcohol and you're not even going to throw me $100.
Get a percentage of the bar because they're not going to be there drinking if it's dead silent and they're sitting in a field.
It was sold to me in a different way. I said yes. I was told, I want you to have a band. And I said, absolutely not. I'm going to pay to play.
No,
I'll donate my time. But once we're involving other people, I would never ask my band to play and not pay. It's not the relationship I want. And it's against.
Same.
Right?
Yeah.
And I can't afford to like eat a show. And it's not worth it. anymore. Like I just have this like growing anger, and I'm sitting there. I like said yes to it and as a favor, and then I grew more and more resentful as the date was coming, especially as the billing was super messed up. And I almost wasn't going to play it, but then I thought I just want to get through this, and I don't want to. I said what I needed to say.
Yes.
They knew I wasn't happy.
Even say it on stage. You know, I love to do that shit.
Do you? Oh my gosh. That is like so 24-year-old me. I was just raging.
I know, I'm not grown up. Yeah.
I always feel like I'm still clawing and climbing. I don't know if you still feel that way, but I feel like you're kicking ass.
Well, thanks.
So you have leverage.
I still feel though, like, you know, sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. Like that made people really angry at me. Maybe I shouldn't have posted that. Most of the time I try to live without regret, but
I never feel better.
Yeah, it does feel good to get up there and be like, hey, isn't it fucked up? I'm the only girl playing. Like when you like to have more women on stage, you know, and people are like, yeah, of course. I get that all the time where I'm like on a show poster and I'm like, yeah, like these dudes that are above me or that are getting the headline spot, as sometimes it's totally deserved and they have more fans and I will not argue with that. But probably 50% of the time, yeah.
You can say literally look at every measurable. I mean, if we're going to use metrics, let's use metrics. Like, let's use the metric of how much work I've put out or how long I've been around. Then let's do the metrics that are annoying, you know, followers, all that stuff.
Exactly.
Like I said, I feel like I'm in an abusive relationship with the music industry. I feel, I mean...
I have like one of my favorite sayings, and I know you know this saying too, is, the last time I used it, it was like during the Grammy nomination, and these people were like, hey, we really want you to do a conversation with this country singer who was also up for an award. And I was just not a fan of his music. I just did not like it. And definitely has over 1 million followers on Instagram. And they were like, but like, it's great exposure. Like you should do it. I'm like, exposure will kill you.
Right. You can die from exposure.
You can die from exposure. I feel like it makes me sleep better at night if I can say no to some stuff and be like, no, I just don't want to do that. You know, I think there were projects that I could have been in or probably people that I could have collaborated that would have taken me to a higher place, blah, blah, blah. But when it comes down to it, I'm like, I only want to do things with people that I respect. And I feel like I know so many people, and you included, where it's like, I just think you should be massive. I think your work is so good. I think the records you make are so good. You've like grown as an artist. You've stayed true to yourself. And it's, you know, and then I have a lot of other friends that are like, can't even, you know, find like an indie label to put out their stuff. And it's like,
and they're so good. And you're like,
and they're so good. I'm like, I'm tearing up just like thinking about it, you know? And then I've seen people that just get so disenchanted with the business that they give up. And it's just like, I hate it. And the only reason that I am even here is because I'm so stubborn that I'm could probably be classified as like insane, like doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different outcome, you know? Even now.
Are you motivated by people saying you can't do something? Because I'm incredibly motivated by that.
Right? Totally. I'm like, let me show you why I can and why
actually,
I will.
I'm going to do this thing that you think I can't do. And fuck you.
It's going to turn out great. Everyone's going to copy it. It's going to be so good.
Yeah, it's going to be so good. I'm going to go into a narcissistic spiral where I think everyone's copying me now.
I had a question for you as I was like thinking about our conversation. How is it for you and Buddy to collaborate and raise a kid and to like do all these things together? Because I'm totally in the same boat.
Yes.
With Jeremy and I feel like they play similar roles in what we do, where it's like Buddy, like, you know, he does so much playing and like plays so many instruments and does so many recordings. And like with Jeremy, it's the same thing where I've had him play every instrument in my band. And he's like really like started so many of my songs, you know, or like helped me finish them, wrote great lines. So how is it like, especially now that y'all have a kid?
I feel like in relationships, there's a natural codependence that occurs. And because Buddy and I had the same dream, and I feel like you and Jeremy had the same dream, right?
Totally.
And so you could actually like line up in the beginning because there was never an explanation of why you were spending 12 hours working on something. And so when it lined up together, when we were finally like, we'd been together a few years before we started working together.
Same.
Yeah, I was like, oh, cool. This is my Johnny Marr, you know?
Yeah.
And then we both were like, okay, what roles do we need to? We've been like, I've been diversifying for 12 years. Like
Yes.
every time I feel like I've learned another skill that I need, there's another skill I need to learn now. I guess it's life. But like I'm learning, like I'm doing so much video work this time around, which is, it's creative.
I love it. I have, even with my second album with Third Man, you know, we would try to plan ahead and get like videos done or whatever, but sometimes it wouldn't happen. I'd be like, I have to have a video. So I would go into my iMovie, and I used to love to take found footage. Like the videos that you've made really recently remind me of a lot of stuff that me and Jeremy used to do. Like we would go back when I felt like I had more time.
Yeah.
We'd go to the library and get like the stock footage that, you know, that anybody could use. And we did a lot of the stop motion, like animation. Like I loved doing that. And I loved doing collaging. And like, I feel like it's really cool.
Well, it's so funny because I was saying, I don't want to do any video. It was pandemic and I was feeling very, like I have a hard time starting things. And then once I'm going, I'm like, okay, I can do this now. And I was kind of like, I don't want to do videos. So I hired someone to do a video and it didn't turn out. And I was like, fine. The video was due 2 days ago. I'm going to do this in the next week. And it forced me to do the stock footage.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. And I enjoy it so much. And you get to do a lot of it has, you know, lining up movements and speed, all that stuff. And I learned After Effects, which is so fun. But then I'm also like learning Photoshop. I'm designing merch. I'm doing basically trying to know how to use all the programs to do these things, because the more DIY, you know, it's just the budgets it just doesn't exist.
Yeah. Well, because I mean, I'm really happy with my label situation and I can do things that I want, but do I want to just like get in the hole over a million things? Like I still am like, I'm still paying for this.
You are.
Because it's basically just a bank that you're like in debt to, and you're either going to buy your way out or they're going to drop you, or you know, who knows how it's going to end.
Or you're going to recoup in 10 years. Like,
yeah.
Right. You know, interesting. It's nice when your records start coming back to you. I have 2 of my records back to me already. So
yes,
it's
same.
Like the 10-year deals. I'm like really glad that I stuck to my guns on a lot of that stuff. But yeah, if you're a smart business person, which I think to survive these days, you have to have some concept of that, unless you're funded by like family wealth.
Right.
But if you're like us, you know, Midwestern, middle class, lower middle class people.
Definitely don't have a Trustafarian thing going on.
Yeah. There's no like, how does that person not have a job? There's none of that going on. Always had a job. If you're like that, you sort of have this necessity to be a good business person. And as a good business person, you can say, how long does it take to make 10 grand? Now, the industry of like really amazing artists that make videos, they deserve to make a lot of money. I wish that there was the economy for it. So you start to think, okay, well, videos are basically lighting money on fire.
Yeah.
Nowadays. And they're fun to do, but how can I do something creative that makes sense where I'm, you know, buying material, you know, I'm just into the, like, you know, buy the materials and then have those. And so I've got like, you know, we're like painters have paints. We have like, lighting and stupid.
Exactly. No, I feel like videos can be so hard too, because when I first kind of started doing more, because all my videos and, you know, with Buffalo Clover and all those things, like it was always DIY. And I loved that because I don't know, it's just like one more level of creativity that you get to like be involved in. But then, you know, I was with Third Man and I was like, had a couple ideas for some videos, and like 2 of them just turned out like I wanted them to be serious. And I don't know if it was because they were like country or whatever. It was like, whoever I would get to do it would like want to make it like hee-haw or something, like some slapstick.
Like a character.
Like kooky. Yeah. And I'm like, no, I don't want this to be funny. I don't. And then I really felt like lighting money on fire because then we would have to do this damage control. Like, well, how can we salvage the footage and shit, you know?
Yes.
But I just recently started doing videos with a really old friend of mine. Her name's Kim Stuckwish, and she is a self-made woman, also from the Midwest. She has been through a lot of traumatic events in her life, but is just so strong and always keeps going. And she's done videos for me. And even if we don't have it in the budget to make her vision come true, she'll be like, oh, I'll just buy this and then I'll go take it back later. You know, she's like, I'm going to go buy a bunch of plants at like Home Depot and then we'll take them all back. Like, we'll just buy this, we'll take it back. She's done videos like for a long time. She was like producing. She would be doing everything, but typical woman, like not get any of the credit. And she just ended up like, she just directed a video for Olivia Rodrigo.
Amazing.
I know, just out of having like nothing. And I just have so much respect for her. And I love introducing friends and seeing them collaborate.
I had a DP that had his own, he was just doing the camera. He had a 4K camera and he was doing the camera. And he just in his mind thought he was the director. And there was me and also a director. And then there was me too directing as well. So it was like, we didn't know until like I had entire shots worked out and then I got the footage back and it was like all close-ups. I'm like, what am I going to fucking do with this close-up right now? We're in this amazing location and I have none of it. And I couldn't tell if it was his like passive aggressive way to get back at, like he had this idea for the video that we were just like, no, you don't.
What is the saying? It's like you'll catch more flies with honey than vinegar or whatever. And it does pay to be nice. I never want to be like, oh man, she was such a bitch. She was really hard to work with. And she just, but you know, sometimes you're like, no, I have a vision and I know what I want. And that's where it gets tricky being a woman because that's always how it gets framed. Like, wow, she was so bossy. It's like, no, I was actually just assertive and wanted to make sure that I got what I wanted because I'm paying for it.
I am the boss.
I am the boss. Don't forget, you work for me.
I'm sorry, but when they say this album sucks because we did something wrong, they're not going to say you did it wrong. They're going to say that I did it wrong.
That's right. It's like sometimes it is really not fun being the boss. And I feel as things have grown in my band, sometimes I feel like maybe they don't want to hang out with me because I'm the boss or, you know, like whatever that is. But they are all so respectful of me and they call me the boss and they know that I am. But like in the same way, I value their input and I love that they want to add to the songs and collaborate and be like, hey, I had an idea for this. And we've all gotten so much better about listening to everyone's ideas and not shooting them down. Like we've already said in this conversation, like I'm picky about who I collaborate with and who I work with, but I will always go for someone who is quirky and a great writer, but maybe doesn't have any kind of genius musical ability. But I don't know, you can just always get a gut feeling from people if it's going to work.
Yeah. You really have to have great people around you that you trust and that trust you.
Speaking of which, who played? Okay, so I know you and Buddy like played most of the stuff on your album, but who else played on it?
Okay, so Linwood Regensburg, who's the bass player from Those Darlings, as everyone remembers. Best band ever.
Yes, miss them.
Great band. And then Andy Spohr, who's been playing drums with me, he used to play with How I Became the Bomb. And then Hags came in on one song, and that's it.
Yeah, and then the rest is all you and Buddy.
Yeah.
It's cool. No, it's such a great record.
Thanks.
So do you guys write lyrics together too? Or is it a solely like musical collaboration?
No.
It's always your lyrics.
When Buddy and I write songs together, it's usually like he wrote a riff and I'm going to sing and write the lyrics over it, or he had the melody, but he's musical. Like lyrics for him are hard and lyrics for me are easy. And musically, he can do anything. It's annoying. I'll just leave. Oh, not in writing, in like recording. I'll just leave because I know if I leave, he's going to do something great. But if I'm watching him, he will be like all nervous and it won't work out. But writing together, there will be times where I'm like, it's not that chord, it's this chord. Like, this is genuinely where we need to get, you know. Yeah.
We do that
build
too.
a chord with,
Yeah.
So we have a pretty good relationship that way in the writing. I think he has a couple of songs on there, but he can write his own songs, but he just doesn't anymore. He just gives me all the good ideas and then I finish it, or we work on it together. Or, you know, a lot of times I just write. We're moms, so we don't have much time.
Yeah, I know. Jeremy is more like writing all the time. And I feel like I will kind of wait for things to boil up. But he knows like how to get the best out of me too. If we're in the studio and I'm like, there's been a couple times where he's really, really made me upset because he read this thing about like Etta James a long time ago, how they would piss her off to get a good vocal take. And I don't like to be angry. I feel like you can't focus when you're angry, but I was doing this whole like kind of poem thing in the studio the other day. And I did like on the demo, I had it perfect. And I was like, I'm never going to be able to redo it. I don't want to redo it. I
know. I hate that.
I know. And I was like, I can't get there. I need to have like an exorcism. And he's like, he like stopped everybody. He like walked into the booth and he whispered something in my ear. And I was like, I don't know if I can swear on here.
We've been swearing
We've been swearing a lot, right? They're going to have a lot of beeping out to do.
Yeah, a lot of asterisks.
Fuck you, like, you bastard. I was like, how could you say that to me? And everybody got like really awkward. It was like, oh, mom and dad are fighting again. Like,
yes. Okay.
Do they still love each other? And then I did it. I had a great take, but everybody wanted to know what he said to me. And I was like, I can't tell you, but only he would know how to get something like that out of me, or really only he would know how to like really hurt me or make me upset.
I think that it's interesting to me too, in a relationship like mine with Buddy, you know, and having a kid and it becoming infinitely harder to find time, you know, just to you know, goof around, and everything has to be really scheduled and really routine oriented to get the work done. And we have to have deadlines. Otherwise we're like, let's go to the pool and spend time with our kid.
Totally.
Right. And live life. But there are times when he will be like, you know, you're not really writing, or, you know, like,
same.
You're not really doing the thing. I see you. And then I'll do something amazing, like quickly. For example, I didn't play guitar at all during the pandemic.
Same. I only played piano. I don't know why, but I could not make myself pick up a guitar.
I love piano. So I didn't really play at all. And then we went to learn the record and I learned all these guitar parts that were hard for me, which I love to learn because it's like challenging. It's finger picking. It's where I want to go.
Right.
And he was like, wow, I'm so proud of you for that. I'm like, see, remember now, I can do this. Why do I need to remind you? Like reminding your partner that you're a badass because you show them this other part of you that's so... I just, like I said, I have a really hard time mentally continuing to give to this. Sometimes it's hard for me to just keep giving and then feel like I'm scratching and clawing.
I know.
I don't want to, I don't care anymore. And like not caring has been the best thing in the world. I also feel very much like it's a new frontier and there's just where I'm at in my life. I'm just not sure what's next, you know?
Well, I mean, I think you're proving that you can do it any way that you want. And that's why what I loved about Harry Nilsson was that he just put out these great records and he was like, I'm not going to go out and like tour them because he had social anxiety and he just didn't do it. It's like, cool. Thanks for the records, Harry.
Yeah, didn't matter.
I'm glad he made them, you know? But I feel that. And I also have really had to work hard where it's like, I kind of always had this thing in my life where I thought, if I just had this, I would be happy. If this just happened, I would be happy. And then you
achieved them.
Yeah. And then I'm like, oh, I did a lot of the things I said I wanted to, but I'm still sometimes very not happy. And it's, you know, like the comparing and I'm like, well, I wish I could do this like this person does. And it's like, I have really tried to cut that out just for my own mental sake and the comparison and all that, because
there's always somebody doing something.
It never ends. Yeah. There's always somebody that's a step ahead of you. And I'm like, oh, I just feel like I can't keep up. And no matter how much time I put into my music and no matter how much time I put into my kids and my home and, you know, like trying to do the things that I think are going to make me like a whole person.
There was some quote that I retweeted a while ago, but it's no matter where you are what you think you want. When you get there, you'll be there with the same baggage. And that baggage is interesting because it drives, right?
Right.
Like drives you to keep going and creating and want to do something. But then it's toxic because, you know, everybody is in between record cycles. And,
Yes.
you know, for every person whose career you envy, you can look at a million people who wish they could get a gig, right?
Right, exactly.
You know, what's so interesting is like living in this town and it's seeing show business and, you know, it's a small town and you have your like group of people, you know, we've known each other for,
I know how many years now. Like it's got to be like 9 or 10 years.
you see so many people start out and then go through their first press campaign and like their first thing and they're like, I'm going to make it. And like the idea of making it, people say all the time to me, they'll say like, I wish you were more successful. Your music's so good, you know, and I'm like, I feel successful.
Yeah,
Stop
what kind
it.
of backhanded compliment is that?
People don't realize it.
People all the time, it'll be like, what artist do you think should have more success than they do? And people are always tagging me in it on Twitter, and I'm like, oh, well, thanks. But I mean, I'm fine.
I feel pretty good.
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm doing all right.
I'm working.
When I first moved here, because I'm not from here, but I moved here and I had, you know, I wrote down a list of all the places I wanted to play. And like, I remember all the bands I wanted to play with and like, you know, all the people I wanted to meet and collaborate with. And it's like, when you get knocked down those like first few times, it's like, it takes a little bit to stand back up again. And I remember being like, just seeing you and Caitlin and seeing those Darlings and Pale Blue Dot and like so many of those bands. And I was just like, I really want to play shows with those people. Like I wanted to have what you and Caitlin had. And, you know, I wanted to like be in that scene. And I remember feeling like an outsider for a really long time and, you know, just feeling like a loser. And I think when I kind of started to be more self-deprecating and just be open with, I was like, yeah, I'm like not really doing very good. It's funny, right?
It is funny. It's relatable.
You know, or like, but there was a while where like we would go out on the road and like, I remember like going out and playing like just a weekend run of dates with Buffalo Clover or whatever. And I'd come back to town and like be hanging out with Banditos or whatever band was at the 5 spot. And they'd be like, how are your gigs this weekend? I'd be like, oh my God, it was so good. Like, probably like 75 people there. You know, I was like pushing a little bit. And then
Yeah, you're like, it was great.
the reality of it is like, well, I lost $200 and we all slept in one hotel room on the floor and there were cockroaches.
Right. I went on my first headline tour for Charlatans and I had this amazing press campaign. And this was when, you know, the world starts with you, right? Like you're only so aware of things as they happen to you. So I thought, I've got an agent. They're putting me out on tour. These clubs are going to be packed.
Yeah, you were getting great press for that record too. Like you had NPR and you had some good things.
And it was out of nowhere. And I was selling.
I loved that record.
And it was out of nowhere, right? I felt like it was easy for me to come to this town and get somewhere with my songwriting and figure out what I wanted to do by looking around. But you and I didn't have the benefit of like being raised in this culture. So we're like in these really isolated other worlds. And then you come here and you don't know what you're doing. You're just doing it and you're trying to listen to what people are telling you to do. And you don't really know when you're young.
Yeah.
But I went on that tour and there was nobody there. I mean, there were some people there in the big cities, but I played a lot of shows to like 10 people. And Ralam Haas was in my band and he was in the features. And I was like, is this how this is? And he was like, yeah. So I felt like, you know, this is just going to keep going up. And it didn't. It actually sort of flatlined. And I've been like living with that. I had to figure out what my purpose was because I couldn't depend on the world to give me my purpose. I had to figure out, you know, what do I enjoy doing? Oh, I enjoy making stuff. And so I'm just going to dive into doing that because that gives me the high and the validation and the dopamine and all of that.
Yeah. I mean, there is like no greater feeling than you're like, I just wrote a great song. The high from that, it's different. I mean, you know, like being on stage, that's great too. But, you know, even me, I'm like, it has been a really long time since I've done a headlining tour. And I feel like I'm always getting like, and granted, there's been a lot going on in the world. I don't think a lot of people are even ready to go stand back in a crowded room of, you know, watching a show right now. But I feel like, you know, always get kind they just want to undersell me. They want to make sure it's safe. They want to, make sure it's a good look, blah, blah, blah. But, then it's like, I'm getting ready to go out and do like a bunch of opening stuff. And it's like, okay, that's great. And I'm going to make more money doing that probably than I would if I did a headlining tour. And is it as rewarding for me? I would love to get up there and do a 90-minute set and have all my shit on stage and, not just like get up there and try to crunch it into 30 minutes and win over somebody else's crowd.
It's hard.
It's not always fun. It's like sometimes it is. Sometimes the crowd's great.
It's work.
But it is work.
One of my questions for you was, or there's two questions, but one of them was, does it get easier the more successful you are, the more leverage you have with misogyny? And what you're telling me is no.
Well, I think that...
no matter what you do.
Yeah, it's still there and it still is. It does always feel like clawing. Like I relate to that where it's like, and not to say that some things haven't gotten better or some things haven't gotten easier, but I still feel like I'm having the same set of challenges a lot of times where it's like, okay, like that billing's not fair. That money's not fair. But I do think that things are slowly changing. We're all slowly moving the dial. I can't imagine what it's like to be a Black woman in this business or a minority and just to like not have the respect that should be due.
Absolutely.
I was talking to Allison Russell the other day and it was just like, man, like, don't worry. I think that a lot of these old guards are going to get replaced. And, maybe in like 10 to 20 years, you've got a lot more women at the helm, a lot more people of color, just folks that are open-minded. And, hopefully someday it'll even out.
I feel like we're seeing it.
Yeah.
Like women are really crushing. And there are definitely people out there who are saying, look, same thing like with the business. Okay, in my business, I'm going to make sure that I'm doing things in a way that reflect my values. And then also there are people saying, oh, I'm going to, book festivals and I'm going to make sure that there's, I'm going to do the extra work to dismantle a segregated society.
Totally. I feel you. It's easy to go on a tear, but I feel like if we don't talk about a lot of these things, then it's just not going to change. And a lot of people don't know that there are these like challenges that come along with it.
No, they see the highlight reel. And so there's all the behind the scenes bullshit going on. The pandemic really like made it clear the financial dire straits everyone is in, and it's getting worse and worse. I have musicians calling me that I'm friends with that are like, hey, I just got this publishing deal, but like after I pay everyone back, I have nothing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like, wow, hearing you talk about it, because I feel like I've been wanting to do the exploitation of artists, like, and get a history and really figure it out as a podcast. And I want to put it on streaming services.
Yeah, no, I think that's an amazing idea. And I would be your guest.
We just did it. We just really did it.
We just did one. Yeah, this first episode.
But I do think that in this celebrity culture, it's hard to even fathom anything other than celebrity status. Like the joke that your parents won't understand what you do until you've been on TV.
It's so true. I just was talking to some friends and they were like, it was some friends talking about some other high school friends. And they're like, well, you know that they shit talked how dumb you were the whole time that you were living in Nashville. And then the second I got, on the first TV show or whatever, they were like, want to be my best friends. And it's,
oh yeah,
that sucks too, because now I'm like, you asshole, I've been being nice to you, giving you tickets this whole time. And then I just found that out last week, but that's the way it goes.
Who told you? Nobody should tell you that stuff. I would rather live completely aloof and have my haters be like kissing my ass in
ignorance
my face.
Is bliss.
It is
so
amazing.
True.
When people try to tell me they have a problem with me, I'm like, why are you telling me this right now? I don't want to know. Talk behind my back.
I don't want to know. People think it's all fun, but it's not. And I'm like, one last thing I want to say is that I have repeated your quote about, no, children didn't ruin my career. I did that on my own. I I relate to that very much. So thanks for that, Jim. I remember the day that you tweeted it.
Well, I had a joke for you that was like, wow, Margo, having a kid really ruined your career.
Oh my God. Well, I did have people say that when I got pregnant with Ramona.
I remember that.
Yeah, it really bugged me. And so it was really great to have a mom friend that is also doing it and that we can talk and we can relate and know that it's like, no, I've totally 100% done that on my own by my opinions and my big ass mouth.
Well, it's this latent misogyny in everybody that's like women in music are only as valuable as their sexual availability. And so women in music actually feel like, I can't get married. I can't come out of the closet.
I know.
I can't have kids. I have to be man-like to be powerful.
Yeah.
And I feel like women are more than ever, especially the younger generation, proving that you don't have to be like a man or a woman or anything. You can just be awesome and be consistent. And even if your contribution to the conversation is, I reached 5,000 people and they were somewhat influenced to write or create something else that influenced so many people, we're all just sort of adding into this.
I have had the most fun talking to you. This has been one of the best podcasts that I've done over this entire past year. And I've done a million.
We've been building this up. We've all this built up. We covered everything kind of naturally. And so I'm so glad they were like, let's call it exploitation. And I'm like, all right, I'm down.
Dude, let's do.
I'm down.
Yeah, it was such a pleasure.
Yes.
I'm ready to do this in person too. We're vaxxed. Let's get together.
All right, let's do it.
Thanks for listening to the Talkhouse Podcast, and thanks to Margo and Tristen for chatting. If you liked what you heard, definitely check out their recent records, and of course, check out Talkhouse on all your favorite social channels. This episode was produced by Melissa Kaplan, and the Talkhouse theme is composed and performed by The Range. See you next time.